We have some breaking news on a bombshell new lawsuit that was just filed by the Stanford Daily, Stanford University's newspaper. They're dealing with some of their staff being threatened with deportation and things like that just for reporting and expressing their opinion, for exercising the First Amendment, a right provided to all citizens and people in this country, not just citizens. They're dealing with that because the government is saying that they are undermining national interests, and that's what this lawsuit deals with. And we're covering that today. We're going to get into the details of it. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's my sidekick, Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. If you like this content, remember to hit that subscribe button so you can see more of it. Brian, let's talk about the Stanford Daily's lawsuit that they just filed.
Okay, I'm not your sidekick, but okay. So we have a lawsuit that was literally filed yesterday in the Northern District of California in federal court. This lawsuit was filed against Marco Rubio and Kristi Noem. Let's talk about specifically what the core allegations are of this lawsuit and unpack it for folks. First of all, it is a lawsuit challenging laws and rules that the administration have put in effect that prevent non-citizens from exercising First Amendment freedom of press and freedom of speech rights. And what specifically this lawsuit says is that students who are writers on the Stanford student newspaper, the Daily News, the Stanford Daily newspaper, are being threatened and challenged because if they express any view that is contrary to the views of the current administration, particularly with respect to anything that's anti-Israel, anti-government, anti-US, that they will have their student visas revoked and they will be immediately deported. And it's not without real concern.
Because I think it's happened at other institutions. You know, folks have been detained. Others have had their visas revoked. I mean, this is a real thing. And it's sad that we have to talk about this again and remind folks that the Constitution and the protections provided by the Constitution apply not just to U.S. citizens. It applies to anyone in this country. The folks that are impacted by this and sort of the plaintiffs in this lawsuit and the people that are concerned about this, yes, granted, they are non-citizens, but they're here. First of all, they're here legally. Even if they weren't here legally, it would still apply to them. But these folks specifically are here legally on either work visas, student visas. They're going through the process. There is nothing illegal about what they've done. But for some reason, this administration and characters like little Marco Rubio and Kristi Noem think that this doesn't apply to them. And they want to use these powers. They want to use this argument of threatening national security or undermining national interests can have their immigration status changed, and they could just kick them out of the country without any due process.
Let's go through a little history lesson, Sean. So we got to go all the way back to 1789, and it was called the Alien Friends Act. And basically it did the same thing. This was they were trying back, 225 years ago to do the same thing, which is to deport people who had views, who were not U.S. citizens, but were here legally, who had views that were contrary to the current administration, which of course can change with the wind, right? As administrations change, it can change. And so this act actually expired by law in 1801. It was never renewed till now. And even Neil Gorsuch said it was one of the most notorious laws of our country. It was widely condemned, and it may have cost the Federalist Party their existence. They may have gone out of existence because this law was so bad and so disliked by people in the United States.
And just to be clear, it's not an actual law that still exists, right? It's not in effect. Right. When you say it's been revived or applied again, that's just, they're sort of trying to do that and not even in an official capacity. They're just using the powers because, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has some degree of power to revoke visa status. But I still think there's an issue when the motivation behind doing that is because of someone exercising their free speech. And that's what's happening here. And the context in which it's happening is the most troubling. These are academic institutions. These are newspapers within academic institutions. It's like doubly important to protect the free speech in places like this. Campus free speech is very important because that's like the bastion of where ideas are formed, where ideas are expressed and exchanged And, where do you draw the line now?
Even if you don't like the ideas, that's the whole point of the First Amendment, is to get ideas out there into the marketplace. And clearly this administration doesn't like ideas that are contrary to its own. But, I think it goes beyond this, Shant, which is this administration has shown an interest and a willingness to modify the Constitution to its own use and to pick and choose the portions of the Constitution that it wants to use. And in even a smaller scale, what this administration has done is said, we simply don't believe that portions of the Constitution apply to people who are not citizens of the United States. And you couldn't be more wrong. The Constitution applies to anybody inside the United States, whether you're here legally or whether you're undocumented, whether you're a citizen or whether you're here on a green card. It applies.
Have they come out and outright disputed that and said, the constitutional protections don't apply to non-citizens that are in the U.S., whether legally or illegally?
Have they actually said those words you just said? No, but they have made ample examples. And this is simply one of them. So bringing it right back to what we're talking about here is we're talking about the fact that they don't like, for example, pro-Palestinian speech. And we're not weighing in one way or another on that issue today. We're simply saying that somebody who has that view, who isn't violent, who isn't trying to violently overthrow the United States, has an absolute right to come out and make those kind of statements, right?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of problems, again, not to limit it to this context, but just talking about it in the academic context. I think there's a lot of problems in using or politicizing the immigration process or immigration enforcement in punishing people for their views, because it can then be twisted into getting, and we kind of see this happening, it could then be twisted into getting, universities to engage in only one type of speech or only promote one political viewpoint. And that's a big problem, right? And especially for someone, the Republican calling card has been, these are liberal elitist institutions that are one-sided. Well, what they're trying to do now is deliberately outright trying to make them one-sided, except in their favor.
This is a slippery slope too, because this has been, Trump's rhetoric has been outright clear about this. They want to deport anyone who they refer to as pro-Hamas, pro-jihadist, those kind of words. And look, certainly the United States could deport somebody who did engage in terrorist activities. No question, no doubt about that. They could prosecute
or
them.
Was promoting it, or was, if the speech entailed, what needs to be done is there needs to be, violent action taken in the United States. That's different.
What I refer to this as a slippery slope is because if that's where it starts, where does it end?
Yeah.
And we don't know where it ends, because now, they're coming after people who talk about wanting to abolish Israel. Okay, we may disagree with that, but somebody has a right to make that statement without violence attached to it.
Yeah. Where do you draw that line, by the way? What's next? Are they going to use this argument of undermining national interests to, go after someone who, I don't know, is anti-Trump? Just
anti-Trump or pro-DEI or whatever the issue, whatever the flavor of the day is for the Trump administration that they want to go after. And that's why this is a slippery slope. So this lawsuit is seeking an injunction on behalf. They're trying now to keep it very narrow, right? So that these rules come out in a narrow fashion. So it's particularly applying to journalists, to student journalists who are exercising free speech rights under the First Amendment. But this lawsuit was just filed. We're going to have to stay tuned. And I guess my final thoughts on this, Shant, is that this is the legal, legitimate war we all have to wage at this time through the legal system, which is to take every single one of these issues, no matter how small it may seem at the time. Student journalists who are saying that they can't exercise their First Amendment rights because they're here legally on a visa, and have to attack every single one of these and get court rulings and get the administration to be held accountable, if they can be held accountable at all. So as usual, you get the last time.
I think there's a lot at stake here. This is an important issue. I think we'll see a decision fairly quickly on this, and we'll keep following it. I think it'll set precedent for this happening in other academic settings, but even non-academic settings in other contexts. We've seen it come up in the law firm type of context. And, it's important. I think free speech is as equally as important as the Fourth Amendment and Fifth Amendment rights we've been talking about on our show. So this is equally as important, and we'll keep up with this and see how it shakes out. But I think it's a good issue. I think good for Stanford for going after the administration, trying to enforce the rights that we all have under the Constitution, citizens and non-citizens alike. It's an important issue. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's my sidekick, Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action. You're not my sidekick? I don't know. You tell me what you want me to call you. No, I'm Shant Karnikian. That's my law partner, Brian Kabateck. Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with our content. And we'll see you on the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.